A word from our sponsor. Ready?
Yeah. Oh. Hello, you are listening to Off Radar, It's a Movie podcast. I'm James Smith, a professional film and video editor.
I'm James Eatock, a freelance writer and illustrator specialising in 1980s cartoons.
And I'm Neil Brock, aka Nige, the man with two names, former film journalist and currently working in the games industry.
Each week, one of us picks a movie that all three of us either haven't seen in many years or in some cases haven't seen at all.
We each watch the chosen movie, return to the microphone and let you all know exactly what we thought of it.
He desperately needs her to survive.
It sort of handled some incredibly delicate topics incredibly well.
I will never watch this again. What was that?
If you fancy joining in and suggesting a movie for us to watch, why not tweet us at Off Radar Podcast
or email us on offradarpod@gmail.com.
If you like what you hear, please subscribe, share, and by all means, leave a review.
For now, strap in, turn the volume up, and let's go Off Radar.
I'm James Smith.
Let me just go and change my shirt.
All right. Hello and welcome back to Off Radar. My name is James Smith and I'm joined by Neil Brock.
Hello.
Who we call Nige, and James Eatock.
Hello. Do we usually... You've changed the order.
You always mix it up.
I mix it out. Sometimes I'll throw you off, just so you remember to be on your toes.
Be on your toes. Oh man, I hope I say hello at the right point.
Yeah, I did think you were going to go a bit wild there, I'll be honest.
Today we're talking about a film called Surge, which was released in 2020. Now this film was recommended for us to watch by Martin Smith, who is my dad.
That's like,
your dad
relation. No, actually, it was my dad.
Yes.
Oh, your dad recommended this?
Yeah. So he watched it. He's a big fan of British cinema in general, so it's no surprise to me that he recommended this. But it's an interesting one for us to talk about on the podcast. I had never heard of it. Had you guys seen this or heard of it before we did it?
No.
Not a clue, no, nothing.
I had not either. It was directed by Aneil Karia, who I'd not heard of, and I don't even know if that's a woman or a man.
It is a man.
It's a man. It's a man. That's politically correct.
I'd be delighted.
He did 3 episodes of Top Boy. He's done a short with Riz Ahmed, but to be honest, he's not done a lot. It stars Ben Whishaw, who he's done a lot of stuff. I guess he's best known for the voice of Paddington.
That's a bit harsh, really.
I was going to say, isn't he best known? He's very notable in the James
he
Bond
plays
films?
Q in Bond. He's in Lobster.
But I've seen him in loads of stuff.
Perfume as well, which he did a few
Was
years
he?
back.
Was he in? I feel like Nigel's got the IMDb to hand. Was he in Nathan Barley?
He was, he played like Pingu
Yes.
or whatever his name was.
Yes,
yeah.
Pingu, that was it,
He
yeah.
gets bullied quite a lot, and I think ends up jumping out a window.
He does, yeah.
Well, and the first film he did after that was that Perfume, The Story of a Murderer, which has Dustin Hoffman in and was a huge thing. And I think he beat off Leonardo DiCaprio for the lead role. And I remember seeing that at the cinema, in fact. So that was.
I saw that at the cinema as well. It's that's a dark film.
Yeah, it really is. But he was also in Layer Cake as well, although it's been a long time since I've seen that. So that was just before.
Wow.
I don't know how big a role he had.
And the recent thing I've watched him in, which I read the book of, which is This Is Going to Hurt, based on the Adam Kay book. And that's a really good book. It's he's basically works in kind of as a junior doctor, and it's his diaries. And basically Ben Whishaw plays a dramatised version of that, and that's really funny and good, and Ben Wishaw's excellent in it.
Well, Adam Kay was a doctor who basically quit being a doctor to become a comedian as well, and since he's done so, has written these books and everything. He actually, Ben Whishaw was also in one of the later series of Fargo as well, which is become a bit of a who's who for sort of Hollywood royalty, I suppose, in some respects. Like Kirsten Dunst, Chris Rock, I think, was in a recent series, Ewan McGregor. So you've got to be of a certain caliber, I think, to be invited to be involved in that. So again, shows how high his stock has risen in the States.
Yeah, and
he's a bloody good actor.
He's a really good actor, and as we'll get to, he's very good in this film. Etok, I asked you to do a little bit of a synopsis for us, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I feel like this is a really easy synopsis because it's a very simple plot. Basically, Ben Whishaw plays Joseph, who's an insular man, kind of keeps himself to himself, very quiet at work, works in an airport, I'm guessing Stansted, for certain reasons I'll come up with later.
I like that. It's like, it's a mystery that we're gonna resolve later.
There's the twist.
But we slowly kind of see him descend into madness. The craziness of the world around him, as in the world we all exist in, kind of gets on top of him. Working at an airport, I guess, for all these, like, occasionally get the odd crazy person, really highlights that he's uncomfortable, as we all would be in certain situations. He has a really strange kind of family. His parents are very, you can tell a lot of what makes his personality so insular is from his parents, the way they treat him. And it's not like he's abused, but there is a form of mental abuse. He's got a very unloving father and a somewhat overbearing mother, but we'll get into those scenes.
They're quite
later.
reserved
but
as well, aren't they?
Yeah,
kind of
picking at him, and
very much so. Basically, as over the course of the movie, or at least up until halfway through, he slowly loses touch with reality. The way I wrote it down was basically he stops listening to the little voice inside his head. And nowhere I think this is more, obviously I'm sure we'll talk about it as we go through it, but where he bites certain things, and it's almost like, if a normal person would do that, you'd get a fork or something and be like, if I kept biting this fork, it would hurt. Or if I keep biting this glass, it will hurt. Like, as in a drinking glass. And in this film, it's almost like the little voice in his head just goes on a day trip and he starts doing things that you shouldn't do. So, yeah, it's basically about a man's descent. I don't want to say into madness, because I think it's just someone who just loses touch with reality and decides, screw it, I'm going to do whatever, because what the world has treated me like shit, so I've got nothing to give back except, and it's not, nothing he does is out of hatred. It's almost like he's just pushing the limits of what he can do. Like, he doesn't engage in any kind of dangerous activity. He just does silly things.
Arms up, arms out.
Getting a good reading though, aren't you?
Zap, 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 zap.
You swallow so loudly, Joseph.
Keep coming!
Joseph, what are you playing at? You know the rules, all right? You don't need me to explain it to you.
Man goes crazy, but not crazy.
Yeah, no, I think so. And I think the thing that kind of first jumps out, at me in this film, is we're examining Joseph as he enters this breakdown, but we're also thrusting the audience with him and through him into this breakdown through the style of how it's shot, which is all very handheld and very... It's so real. It's
so good.
Like an action scene out of Spooks or something.
Yeah, yes. That's a good
lot on your Spooks.
There's so many Spooks.
Just like Series 2, Episode 4 Smith classic.
And it starts. He's got quite a senior. He's a security officer at an airport, so it's quite a trusted job, which is quite an interesting job for him to have as this character who is clearly not quite right. Something's not right. He's very anxious. He's on edge, and everything he sees, he's got these little tics. And Ben Whishaw plays this incredibly well. And in the airport where it kind of starts, people are kind of talking about him. It's his birthday, isn't it? And he doesn't. Someone's going to have a birthday cake and they don't know who it's for. He's lost. He's a no voice in this world. He's kind of forgotten, and he feels like the whole world is against him. There is no light, and that is the intention of the filmmakers, to make you feel like there is no light in this film. I felt.
And do you mind if I chip in with like a bit of a thing here? So the reason I mentioned Stansted earlier is that, so I start watching this film, I'm like, oh, Stansted. And then he comes out of a station, I was like, okay. And then, the scene goes to him going home at night, and you see his very kind of lonely home life. It's just him in an apartment. And then he comes out during the day, and I was like, holy shit, he's in fucking Tottenham.
Oh, right.
And so he was basically living just up the road from where I live. So all the scenes on that high street are where I spent 5 years of my life. So at times, I know it's going to sound really melodramatic, but I mean this. This was kind of a hard film to watch because there's a reason, maybe I've jumped too far ahead, but there's a reason they chose Tottenham for the chaotic nature of it. Because whether people want to admit it or not, it's like you live in Tottenham. There was a reason that I would go out prior to midday and make sure I was back home around about, midday, 1 o'clock. Because that high street during the day was just it could be a nightmare. It could drive you insane. The location is so perfectly chosen because the pavements are your average pavement width, but you've got that non-stop traffic down the high street, the buses, the police cars. It's Tottenham. There's no, I guarantee when they were doing scouting locations, they were like, we need to put this character who's on the edge into a world where he's going to be pushed over the edge. And as someone who lived in Tottenham for 5 years and had real issues at times living there, I found it really hard to watch at times because I was like, oh, I felt that suffocation walking along there. It was a scary place at times and a very lonely place at times. And so watching this film, it was just like, that's, I can't connect to, I'm going to rob a bank, but I can connect to like really losing your rag and wanting to do something and then thinking, no, wait, the little voice in my head says, don't do that because you'll probably get knifed or shot. And I think Ben Wishaw's character in this loses that voice in his head and he's just like, I'm going to do whatever. If he'd been barged in the street and knocked over, Ben Wishaw's character probably would have got up, smashed a bottle and stabbed someone at this point in the film. So I think it's a really interesting exploration of loneliness in London. But obviously this character has like a home life that's pushed him into this kind of mindset.
What's going on in that head?
Get him out.
It is obviously, as you say, like for you especially, that Tottenham factor, but I think there's a lot of parts of London where it's quite similar, like East London, South London. I can think of a few places off the top of my head, but even then as well, I think since COVID as well, and kind of this where so many people for such a long time were so isolated, to now be going back into that world where suddenly there are people on the streets and there are things going on, the social anxiety and the sort of almost losing your ability and how to interact with people. He's almost like a prime example of someone who's come out the other side of that. And I think this film was actually filmed beforehand, so kind of like 2020 or maybe even during as well. Wow. But I think it is something that a lot of people can kind of connect with, that feeling of like, I don't feel part of anything. I'm sort of even around people, I feel lonely. Like, as you mentioned, the birthday scene where I think the girl that he's infatuated with is like eating a piece of cake. It's like, oh, whose birthday is it anyway? And it's like, it's his, but you only find that out later when he goes to his mum and dad's to have like cake there. And as you say, it's really brutal, isn't it?
That scene with any of the scenes with his parents, they feel, the chaos of London and stuff like that is kind of accentuated even more when he's with his parents because he doesn't feel loved and by the two people that he feels like he should be. His mum is kind of like, she's always just picking at him and she's like, oh, don't slurp like that and stuff like that. And his dad...
The birthday cake scene is brilliant though, like where he goes into the kitchen and she's like, no, you've ruined it, it's supposed to be a surprise. And he's like, oh well, we'll just have she's like, go back in the room and I'll bring the birthday cake. And she brings it with all the candles lit like a proper birthday, and it's just so fucking miserable when you see this.
And his dad's just like, you idiot. It's like, you just walk in the kitchen like just to get a drink. It's not. What did he do wrong?
You really hate the dad, and the dad is played, and both the mum and dad are played equally as well. Like their characters are kind of pivotal to selling, like what you've said about like feeling that anxiety through Ben Wishaw's character. The one light in this film is the girl, Lily. Who kind of falls for.
It's so strange though.
It's very
odd. Like the girl, as we mentioned, that he becomes infatuated with, he decides for some reason, he hears she's ill and that he overheard her talking about her TV not working or not being able to hook up her laptop. So he kind of almost becomes like this superhero of wanting to go and fix that problem. And that gets him into a really bizarre situation where he can't get any money out. So he's like going to the bank, and it's like that classic. It's almost like you could imagine it almost being like a Pink Panther Peter Sellers films of like don't. But obviously the way he's taken it and the way it's affecting him is very much on the other end of the scale, where he's just getting more frustrated, more fed up. And in the end, I think he goes into the bank with like a banana or his like hand underneath, slips in a little note and says like, "Give me your money or I'm going to shoot you," kind of thing. And obviously we've known from seeing this character for the first, say, half an hour, 45 minutes of the film, there's no way he's got a gun. No. There's no way he's going to do anything like sort of this extreme. But he's just, as you said, he's kind of hit breaking point. And it feels like a lot of this film are like small little moments where you think, that's kind of added a bit more to kind of like the scale or the thing that's building up inside him. And he doesn't really explode. It's just little bits. And even when he does explode, it's not like this huge explosion of everything going crazy. So he like cuts up a sheet in a hotel room in a pillowcase, or he kind of robs a bank in like the most low-key way you could ever imagine to buy a bloody like HDMI cable from a like a corner shop, like a...
No, that shop, I used to go in there. I bought this is the thing, I bought an HDMI cable in there as well. I was like, someone just watched my life. I'm not joking either. The Truman Show goes ETOP style. She doesn't show any signs of, desiring him or anything like that.
Almost pity.
He goes but then he comes back and they get very close, and then suddenly it's like passionate, very brief lovemaking, and it was like, that kind of felt a bit out of nowhere.
Yeah, definitely. It's me drinking like a bottle of like fizzy pop or something like that, and all of a sudden it's like shagging her on the side of like her kitchen. And like she's got a kid, which you can kind of see, I think, on like her desktop background when he hooks up the laptop. Obviously, doesn't appear to be a fella around, but as you say, like all their interactions prior to that. I mean, even when she first lets him in, when he kind of comes around to fix the TV, she's a little bit apprehensive, just like kind of like, well, I'm ill, I can't be bothered to argue this, just come in. And then, well, he fixed it, might as well give him a sympathy shag, and it's like, what? It's just...
Or is it the only thing I can try and work out is maybe like because he's now this kind of
hero.
He has this like don't care attitude.
Yeah.
It's not so much the hero; it's like don't care attitude that he's not projecting that as much of that kind of like shy kind of thing. So he's kind of like. And you see that there's a change in his personality where he's obviously he's almost like he's on cocaine, dare I say. He's sort of like, right, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And then he obviously goes back to hers and they do...
It's a bit Fight Clubby, isn't it? Where suddenly he's almost got like this second... It's almost like a different version of himself doing these things that are outrageous, I suppose.
You could almost see at one point, like towards the end of the film, them suddenly doing a twist, and then he realizes that it was all a dream at one point. Or so he wakes up in his parents' bed or something.
Oh, mate. The police are looking for you.
Weirdly, with this film, you do root for him. Well, not weirdly, you do root for him. And I think one of my favourite, most powerful scenes, not favourite, because every scene is quite awkward in this film, is the wedding scene.
I was just thinking.
So
the best man.
Horrible best man, and he's such a prick. And you hate him.
Horrific.
The worst speech.
The worst speech you could ever. And basically Joseph, stops him from humiliating the bridegroom anymore and becomes, in his own mind, a bit of this like hero that he is trying to be. This kind of
just gate crashes this wedding in a hotel, isn't it?
But he goes up to the best man. It's so well done, and throughout the film we hear all the interactions, but he just goes up to the best man, whispers in his ear, and this best man who's like, "Oi mate, you better back off or I'm going to knock you out," or whatever. Whispers in the best man's ear, and the best man's like, okay, kind of just stops, and it's like, what did he say to him? And it might have been like something evil and threatening, or it might have been something like, "Look mate, like you see, it's their wedding, not your kind of stage performance. And like you say, he becomes like a bit of a hero. He sits back down, and then suddenly everybody at the wedding's like, "Yay!" And they're like,
he's like dressed really scruffy. He looks like a homeless person that's kind of just wandered in.
He's got fluff on him because he's just been cutting up the hotel room. He's got like feathers on him and stuff. It's like so bizarre.
I think also with Wishaw's performance, it's such a physical performance as well, isn't it? It's although it's hard to watch in a kind of mental kind of the way he has his tics and stuff, it's sometimes I feel like it's like a bit of a dance what he does on screen in this film.
I can see that. You could see this film being turned into like ballet. Do you know what I mean?
This film obviously hinges on whoever is the lead's performance, but he's almost unrecognisable in this film because of how different I've seen him before.
Well, he's one of those actors that's got the talent to really bury himself in a role. So you kind of watch it and you forget you're watching Ben Whishaw play. Do you know what I mean? He does that even with, I won't profess to knowing all the James Bond films in and out. I'm pretty sure I've seen all the Daniel Craig ones. But even in those, you're not watching. I don't feel like I'm ever watching Ben Whishaw. It's like, oh no, this is the well-spoken gent who builds technology. It's Q. He's an incredible actor. And this is one performance where, he doesn't have to do any speeches or anything like that, but everything, in his eyes and his body language, like you say, it's a very kind of physical performance. It really, really comes across. Perfect choice for the role. I think that's the best way to put it.
There's one scene where we've already spoke about the beginning of the scene where he's with his parents, which is I'd say one of the hardest to watch scenes that I've seen in a long time, where he is with his parents and he's basically finally showing them how he's feeling. But the way he does it is he takes a glass of water. I'm now demonstrating it on the audio. And breaks the glass in his teeth and starts bleeding at the dinner table, and it's a horrific scene.
What have you done? No! Joseph, just stay here! Don't you get blood on that carpet! Come here! Joyce! Come here! Joseph!
Joyce, come back!
Come on, lady! Open the door!
It's the way it's shot, because you see him he keeps pushing. He does it earlier in the film, I think, with a glass where he's drinking and he kind of pushes it back into his kind of.
He's got this kind of tick, hasn't he, with his mouth and his teeth.
Yeah. And he keeps doing it, and he does it in this scene. It kind of goes back, and you can almost. I can't remember. Like, I'm sure the sound design does do a great job, but you can almost hear like the glass hitting his teeth, and then he just breaks it, and it's so sudden, and all this blood, and you're like, oh god, so grim. And then he just runs out the house.
Yeah,
he goes up to the bathroom first, and the way, and again with the parents are like blaming him, aren't they? Like. Yeah, and granted, he did bite the glass, but instead of saying, "Are you okay?" they're like, "I knew something like this would happen," and it's all very accusational, as opposed to, "Are you okay?" And again, showing how he is, how he has been raised with this complete lack of love.
Yeah, really well put. So, okay, let's have a James E. Talk /
trivia
Nige
jingle. Trivia, okay.
I don't
That's
get
my
a soundtrack for my trivia. That's outrageous.
I did it once before.
Yeah.
I think if you go back through a few episodes, I definitely did like a Nige.
I sometimes
trivia
put a little
thing,
sting before your trivia, but yeah.
Do you?
Sting.
Not the singer.
Yeah, that's what they call them.
A little bit of message in the bottle. Here's the message. It's for trivia. Roxanne. Sorry.
You get copyright strike. So yeah, so towards the end of the movie, he's all beaten and blooded because he's riding. He nicks a quad bike.
Yeah, a guy who's been revving it and doing his, and that is the one that I think for me, it's like that is one of the most frustrating ones of like all the crazy stuff that's going on in his life. That's a little bit annoying. That's right up there. Just some guy so inconsiderate.
Yeah,
it's like I could see how he loses his shit there.
Again, welcome to Tottenham. Yeah. So he nicks the quad bike and does the off. And he's going down, I think at this point it might be Tottenham High Street, I forget. But he's bombing it down. And a car pulls out and he gets knocked off. And he kind of, the driver's like, the driver, instead of being like, "Are you okay, mate?" He's like, "What the fuck?" You know, he kind of gets very confrontational. And then Joseph and the driver start getting into a physical alteration. So I'm watching it, and I was like, I recognise the driver, right? So at first I was like, "Oh yeah, he played."
This is going to be a Spooks thing, isn't it?
No, it's not. BBC Two Shooting Stars comedy series, Vic Reeves and Bob Mortimer. One of the most recent kind of versions of that show, they had Angelo, the guy would be like, that's him, that's the actor. But the even funnier thing is, I was in Muswell Hill once having coffee. He came in, sat down, and we briefly chatted, but we didn't talk about I know who you are and you know who I am. We just briefly talked about, I forget what it was now, but we sat there just chatting. He was on one table, I was on the other. And I was just like, so this film connects both Tottenham and Muswell Hill to me, two areas which I used to frequent a lot. So I was watching this, I was like, that's Angelo. And I was like, I think his name's, oh my God.
Dan Renton.
Skinner. There we go. Skinner. Yeah, Dan Renton Skinner.
Oh my God, yeah, is him. And he was in High Rise as well, apparently. Well, my bit of trivia is that this film, you mentioned earlier that the fact that the director hasn't really done a huge amount of stuff, but has made some short films. Well, this is the film that we're obviously reviewing right now, Surge, was originally made as a 12-minute short film called Beat, starring Ben Whishaw. So they had done it 7 years previous, and it was always in their mind to try and do something more with the character. In the original, the character was just called The Man, and the synopsis is, it's a film about a man walking a paper-thin line between hopelessness and euphoria, testing and pushing the boundaries of conventions and impulse, which is obviously very similar to what this film ended up being.
I wonder where it was filmed. Tottenham.
Well, quite possibly, I would say. But apparently those two are really good friends in real life. They're good friends, and I sort of watched an interview, bizarrely, an interview conducted by Kevin Smith with the director and Ben Whishaw at some random festival. And he was saying, Ben Whishaw, it's really good to actually work with a contemporary, kind of someone my age, because obviously a lot of people he works with are older directors where he doesn't really have that much in common. So he found that working with him and being so interested in doing this on such a small scale, considering the Paddington, the James Bond type movies, he got a really strong performance out of him. So it was 7 years in the making, more or less. So there you go.
So before we get to our ratings, Martin, my dad, has written a little thing. So this is what my dad said. He said, Surge is one of those films, unlike so many nowadays, which remains with you long after you watch it. A really powerful performance, brilliantly portrayed by Ben Whishaw, showing he is far more than just the voice of Paddington or Q from the Bond films. He takes his character, a customer officer at the airport, from relative normality through a tragic self-destruction over a period of 24 hours. As his life implodes around him, you can almost feel it happening. The way the film is shot, as the viewer, you seem to be more than just an observer. You feel the character's mental collapse. The scene with his parents where he breaks the glass in his mouth is really quite hard to watch. My words to describe: powerful, tragic, sad, thought-provoking, disturbing and realistic. 8 out of 10 from my dad.
Does your dad want to come on this podcast? Because he sounds like he could do a better job than us.
That's what he's talking about.
Yeah, it was...
Damn.
Yeah, well done, Dad.
Well done, Dad. Not mine.
But your dad, well done. Maybe we could have a your dad's
well done.
Everyone,
except Ben Winshaw's in this film.
Apart from him, he was a bad dad.
He was a bad dad. Bad dad.
What did you think of this film, Etok? Let's go to you first this time.
Like I say, I found there was a weird connection for me with this film. Not like your typical connection or non-connection with a movie. This was like, oh wow, I've kind of walked those streets. I've kind of felt that frustration and that anxiety. It was kind of a bit of a tricky watch for me. But I appreciate what the film was, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it did a fantastic job of telling this very simple story and making you like your honestly, your dad's review was like kind of what I would say, except better and more concise, which I don't do. So yeah, I honestly, I really... enjoy's a weird word to use, isn't it? Because it's not a film you want to go, oh, I can't wait to watch that again. Or it's one I'd recommend to people highly, but you kind of have to warn them. It's like, it's not a pleasant movie. It's not a horror movie, but it's definitely, it's not an edge of the seat movie, but it's definitely like, yeah, it just makes your anxiety levels, or at least mine, were through the roof watching this at times. So in terms of filmmaking and as a film, I think it's really good. So I will give it a 7 out of 10.
Yeah, okay.
Well, that's me.
Nice, well said. Nige?
I watched it with my partner, and she sort of got a lot out of it as well at the time. I agree with Etok in the sense it is a film that does stay with you for a bit. It's set over like a 24-hour period, but I feel like even though it's relatively short, it's kind of, it almost drags a little bit, I guess. And I think for me, it's quite a harsh comparison, I suppose. But immediately I thought of the Michael Douglas film Falling Down, where it's kind of very similar.
That's a great comparison.
Yeah, apart from it's obviously a lot more Americanized. There's a lot more crazy goings on. Obviously, having firearms in the States.
That's probably a little bit more comic as well, I guess.
Yeah, but even that, I think it takes it to slightly more extremes. I feel like this is... It sounds quite harsh. It feels a bit more like a TV movie kind of film. It's the sort of thing that could have been almost like a 2-episode mini-series rather than like a feature-length film. And obviously Ben Whishaw is tremendous in it. Like really, really strong. You really feel like he is that character. But yeah, for me, it's not the sort of film I'd necessarily go back and watch again. I don't think it's the sort of film that I would have sort of gone out of my way to watch if it hadn't have come up because of your dad, Smith. So, but yeah, I enjoyed it nevertheless. But for me, not quite as passionate about it as Etok. I'd give it a 6 out of 10. Yeah,
fair enough. Yeah, I love the style. I love the authenticity of it, the performances. The sound design. I think from a filmmaking point of view, it's an incredibly strong film in that sense.
You can appreciate it, yeah.
And very often in film in general, like you need to feel something, whether that be laughing, crying, and so often I think films don't necessarily hit that mark, whereas this does make you feel. It really makes you anxious and on the edge, and it does what it intends to do. It grips you, but there is something where I wanted a little bit more hope in the film and kindness, but that's not its intention. That's it's done the right job. I agree with both of you. It's a one watch film, like something like Requiem for a Dream. It's like an experience.
Oh God, yeah.
But I would still recommend people watch it because I think it is a powerful film and a shocking film. So yeah, I agree with Etok. I'm going to go for a 7 out of 10.
Cool.
And guys, if you have seen this film, get in touch. Let us know what you think of Surge. Email us on offradarpod@gmail.com. Tweet us at offradarpodcast. Find us on Facebook. What's your rating? And give us a film to watch next time.